Welcome to Tales by the Fire. Tonight, the fire's glow keeps the dark at bay as the wind whispers its secrets. It's the perfect night for a story. One that chills the spine and stirs the imagination. What would drive a mother to kill her own child? How much guilt could twist a soul? And what does so much guilt transform one's soul into? The tale of Onibaba, the demon hag of Adachigahara, explores these haunting questions. But Onibaba wasn't always the figure of terror she's known as today. She was once a woman, a mother, a sister, and it's in her humanity that her tragedy lies. The Onibaba we now fear, known as a yokai, a kind of supernatural creature from Japanese folklore, wasn't always imagined as a demon. The chilling transformation of her tale begins with a quiet life interrupted by desperate decisions, tragic mistakes, and the consuming power of guilt. The snow had been falling steadily for weeks, blanketing the hills of Adachigahara in a white stillness that muffled all sound. Families huddled indoors, warmed by flickering fires, sharing quiet meals and stories. Despite the isolation of winter, there was a quiet beauty to it all, a rhythm of survival in harmony with the land. Onibaba's home was modest, but warm, its hearth burning brightly against the chill that seeped through the wooden walls. She had spent much of her time tending to her daughter, who was heavy with child. The young woman had grown pale in the past weeks, her movements slower, her appetite diminishing. Onibaba worried silently, watching her daughter sleep by the fire, her hands instinctively reaching for herbs and remedies from her small stores. In the stillness of the evening, the bond between mother and daughter was clear. Onibaba had spent hours each day preparing nourishing broths, whispering reassurances, and smoothing her daughter's hair as she rested. The villagers admired her dedication, though many whispered that it masked deeper insecurities, old wounds from a rivalry with her neighbor whose daughter, also expecting, seemed to glow with health and joy. The quiet was shattered by a knock at the door. Onibaba opened it to find a trembling young messenger, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. He handed her a letter with shaking hands. "It's from your sister," he said, before retreating into the storm. Onibaba's heart sank as she read. Her sister's baby was gravely ill, and time was running out. The healer had given up hope, and her sister pleaded for help. Onibaba clutched the letter tightly, her thoughts racing. She couldn't abandon her daughter. Not now. But neither could she ignore her sister's desperate call. After a sleepless night, she made her decision. At dawn, she would leave, entrusting her daughter to the care of a kind neighbor. She packed quickly, her mind a storm of worry and guilt. The snowstorm had worsened by morning, the hills treacherous and unyielding. Onibaba cast one last glance at her home before setting out into the blinding white. Her love for her daughter weighed heavy on her heart, but so did the duty she felt toward her sister. As she trudged through the storm, she prayed silently for the strength to save them both. When she arrived at her sister's home, the sight of the frail, whimpering baby struck her like a dagger. The infant's breath came in shallow gasps, its tiny body limp. Her sister's face was etched with despair. "I've tried everything," her sister wept. "The healer said there's no cure." But Onibaba disagreed. She had heard of an unthinkable remedy, a dark, desperate act that could save the child. "Feed the liver of an unborn fetus to the baby," she whispered. "It will break the fever and restore strength." Her sister recoiled in horror. How can you even suggest such a thing? Where would we find... I'll handle it, Onibaba interrupted, her voice firm. You focus on the child. I will do what must be done. That night, as a bitter storm raged outside, Onibaba set off for her neighbor's home. The woman's daughter, vibrant and full of life, was expecting any day now. The thought of what she was about to do sickened her, but the image of her sister's dying baby steeled her resolve. Hours later, she crept into the house under the cover of darkness. The glow of the hearth illuminated the sleeping form of the pregnant girl. Onibaba's hands trembled as she drew her blade, her breath hitching in her throat. In one swift motion, she silenced the girl. Tears streamed down her face as she carried out the grim task, extracting the liver with shaking hands. She stared at it, the weight of her actions pressing down on her chest like a stone. As she turned to leave, her gaze fell on a small leather cord lying on the floor. Attached to it was a familiar talisman, a charm she had given her daughter for protection. Time seemed to freeze as she looked down at the lifeless face before her. Recognition dawned slowly, then hit her like a thunderclap. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No, no, no!" The girl she had just slain was her own daughter. In her desperation, she hadn't realized that her neighbor, in a gesture of kindness, had taken her daughter in during the storm, after the roof of their home had collapsed. The blade fell from her hands as she staggered backward, her mind unraveling. The realization that she had killed not only her daughter but also her unborn grandchild shattered her. She fled into the storm, her cries swallowed by the howling wind. The villagers say Onibaba was never seen again as the woman she once was. Consumed by grief and guilt, she wandered the hills, her mind lost to the horrors of her actions. Legend holds that her torment transformed her into a yokai, a creature of nightmare that preys on the unsuspecting. To this day it is said that if you walk the hills of Adachigahara, you might hear her mournful cries on the wind. And if you meet a kindly old woman in need of help, be wary. For behind her gentle facade might lurk the demon hag, forever seeking redemption for a sin that can never be undone. What did you think of this retelling? Do you believe the Onibaba was a victim of circumstance or entirely responsible for her descent into legend? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us tonight at Tales by the Fire. Until next time, if you dare.